Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Bhaktiruttamam. Keep forgetting the last line. Bhaktir Bhaktir Naishtiki Om Ajnanamirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Paschachadeshatarane. So we were discussing the 13th chapter of the first canto, Dhritarashtra quits home, and we will resume from verse 42. So before we read the verse 42, quickly establishing the flow so far. So far in the 13th chapter, we see the glories of the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira. Then we see the arrival of Mahatma Vidur, and we see the conversation, specifically the conversation between two Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra doesn't, or at least there is no verse of Dhritarashtra speaking, but Vidur speaking to Dhritarashtra, speaking very strongly about the need for him to renounce. And the next day morning, Yudhishthira gets up in the morning, performs his morning duties as mandated for a grihastha, and then when he enters into the palace of his elders to give obeisances to them, so he notices that Dhritarashtra and Vidur and Gandhari are gone, and at that point he begins to lament and speculate that why have they gone? Were they upset at me because I caused them so much of pain? He begins to condemn his own lack of gratitude and appreciate the good qualities of Dhritarashtra, much in the mood of a devotee. And while he is lamenting that, then Bhagwan Narad comes. And after a brief greeting to Narad, Yudhishthira places this question in front of them as to the whereabouts of his uncles and Gandhari. So the first verse that Narad speaks, which was verse 41, in which Narad says that everyone is protected by Krishna, and it is Krishna only who brings people together and sets them apart. And then we discussed that Narad at this point is not really answering the question of Yudhishthira, but just like Vidur came to free Dhritarashtra of his misconceptions, Narad Muni has come to do the same thing to Maharaj Yudhishthira. So Maharaj Yudhishthira's misconception was that he is the protector, that he is the one who is the basis of giving sustenance to Dhritarashtra, and without him, Dhritarashtra and Gandhari would probably perish. And this is one form of the God complex. So, which is the more insidious form, which is the more subtle and difficult to remedy. So it's like when people are giving in charity, and it's in the mode of goodness, but they may also develop this conception that if it was not for their charity, then so many people would go hungry, or so many children will go without education. And then they reach this next stage, in which they begin to consider themselves to be the protector and savior of other people. So Yudhishthir does not have it in such a gross form, but he definitely has traces of it. And Narad Muni, as a saint and a well-wisher of Maharaj Yudhishthir, wants to remedy him. So the first point that he makes is that everybody is under the control of destiny, and everybody is protected or destroyed by their destiny in the form of Krishna. So let's continue with the verse 42. Yatha gavo nasi protas tantyam badas chadamabhi vaktantyam namabhir baddha vahanti balim ishituhu. As a cow bound through the nose by a long rope is conditioned, so also human beings are bound by different Vedic injunctions and are conditioned to obey the orders of the Supreme. So we notice that this phrase, Vahanti Bilamishu, that one is protected by the worship of the Lord, it is repeated in both the verses, 41 and 42, because it serves as the connection between the proposition that was made in that verse and an explanation of that proposition. So the proposition that was made in the previous verse was that everybody is controlled by their destiny. So how are they controlled by destiny? So Narad made both the points. They're controlled by Krishna and they're controlled by destiny. So how does this happen? Is Krishna their destiny? Does the destiny come from Krishna? Or does Krishna act based on their destiny? So this point is clarified in this verse and the next verse. So here Narad uses a metaphor, and he says that just like a cow is bound by a rope. So typically speaking, this analogy is used to convey the interplay between destiny and free will. So we see this analogy used very often, that there is a pole and there is a rope. The cow is bound by a rope to the pole. So until, as far as the rope can permit, the cow is free to move. It can eat the grass, it can drink the water, it can sit, it can sleep. So within the circumference of the rope, the cow does not have any restrictions, but it cannot go beyond the slack of the rope. So if there were to be very sumptuous food just a little bit outside the length of the rope, regardless of how hard the cow tried, it would not be able to reach it. So the slack of the rope is basically the destiny, and within the slack, the fact that the cow can do what it pleases, that is free will. So people who have a lot of good karma, they have a long rope, so their free will is higher. People who have a lot of bad karma, they have a very short rope, they have limited free will. And within that, as we said, within that realm of the free beyond that free will is the limitation of the destiny. That regardless of how hard the cow pulls on the rope, it will not be able to exceed the slack of the rope. So regardless of how hard a person tries, the person will not be able to get more than what is destined. So this is the typical metaphor that is used, but Narad is here using it in a different context. So if you look at the verse, Narad says that a cow is bound through the nose by a long rope. So he actually is talking about, he's actually talking about two ropes over here. There is one rope, Nashi Protaha, that goes through the nose of the cow. And the other is the longer rope, Tantayam Badha, that binds the cow. So the shorter rope is a metaphor for binding the jiva to their designations. So the jiva is very closely bound to the designation as determined by the varna and the ashram. And the longer rope, it represents the Vedic injunctions. So the metaphor that Narad Muni is conveying to Yudhishthira over here is that the jivas are very closely bound to their designations, and based on this designation, they follow the appropriate Vedic injunctions, or they are bound by the respective Vedic injunction. So the designation is somebody is a in Yudhishthira's case, somebody is a Kshatriya and a Grahastha. That is the short rope that binds Yudhishthira. Then the set of duties that are concomitant to a Kshatriya Grahastha is the longer rope, by which the person leads his life. So what is this? So this is essentially Karmakand. That what is Karmakand? That understand what is your designation. Based on the designation, understand what is the scriptures that is asking you to do, and then follow through with the scriptural injunctions. So this is an explanation to the previous verse, that how is Krishna controlling the destiny. So Krishna is controlling the destiny through the process of karma. What is the process of karma? Executing your prescribed duties. What is the basis of executing your prescribed duties? Understanding what your designation is. So putting it together, what Narad Muni is saying, that Krishna in the form of Karmakand creates designations. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Chaturvarnya Maya Sreshta Guna Karma Vibhagashaha, that I am the one who creates these four divisions in the society. So based on this designation, so the jiva is very closely bound to this, that closely associates with this designations. He now gets a set of prescribed activities. And depending on how well he executes the prescribed activities, he creates his destiny. And by the force of this destiny, the person is either protected or by destroyed. So ultimately, Krishna through karma, through destiny, is protecting and destroying all the living entities. So now we can understand that when Narad Muni came, he was called as he was addressed as a philosopher saint, as Satamuni. So because he is very deeply imbued in the philosophy. So Srila Prabhupada, he writes a very strong preaching purport to this verse. So when we see Prabhupada's purports, sometimes he writes very philosophical purports that expand on the philosophy, and then sometimes he will also use the points that are made in the verse to establish preaching points. Because this verse talks about surrender to Vedic injunctions, Srila Prabhupada uses this opportunity to preach. And so I won't go through the purport, but I'll just quickly go over the points that he is making. So Prabhupada says, first points that he made is that the Vedic injunctions should be always followed. Disobeying them by performing sinful activities will wreak havoc. So that is the ground zero. Then he says that these injunctions are universal. They may be explained differently in different religions, but substantively they are the same. So he says that to obey the orders of the Supreme Lord, the codes of religion. That is the purpose of all the religions in the world. The third point that he makes is that the only way to get out of material entanglement is to follow the orders of the Supreme. So here if you see, so this process that is being explained by Srila Prabhupada is that of Karmakand. That the Vedic injunctions give you your Varnashram Dharma. You execute the Varnashram Dharma for gradual purification, and gradually you will reach a point where you will be liberated. So this is not Srila Prabhupada's typical mood. He does not promote Karmakand for obvious reasons, that in Kali Yuga it's impossible to follow it. But here, because the verses are are introducing the notion of Karmakand, Srila Prabhupada says it, but then in his mood of a devotee, later on in the purport, he will connect it to bhakti. So he says that by carrying out the orders of the Lord, the conditioned living being gradually becomes free from the clutches of material existence. So this is Karmakand. But then he says the factual position of the living being is, however, that he is the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. In this liberated stage, he renders service to the Lord in transcendental love and enjoys a life of full freedom, sometimes on an equal level with the Lord, or sometimes more than the Lord. So this is Srila Prabhupada talking about bhakti. So he mentions Karmakand because that's what the verse talks about it, but he again brings our attention to bhakti. So after having spoken about Karmakand, then Srila Prabhupada basically uses it as a segue to preaching. So he says that these codes of religion should not be subverted by the laws of the state. And then he says that unfortunately that is not happening. So in the purport he says the secular state or the godless state allows the citizens to break the laws of God, but restricts them from disobeying the laws of the state. The result is that people in general suffer more by breaking the laws of God than by obeying the imperfect laws made by man. And then he goes on to say is that any law that are made by men are imperfect because all conditioned men are imperfect. So then he summarizes that in the conditioned material world, every living being wants to be the lord of other living beings. And thus by the illusion of Maya, this mentality of lording it over becomes a cause of further extension of conditioned life. So in the material world, the living being is still more conditioned until he surrenders unto the Lord by reviving his original state of eternal servitorship. That is the last instruction of Bhagavad Gita and all other recognized scriptures of the Lord. So Srila Prabhupada will always bring our attention back to the process of Shuddha Bhakti. And the point he's making is that secular states will establish constitutional laws that that might subvert the religious laws. Like there are states that give freedom of what are they called, pro-choice, but religious laws don't allow for that. And there are many other instances where under the guise of secularity, the state allows or condones sinful activities. Meat eating is one example of that. And Srila Prabhupada gives a further insight that man-made laws will always be imperfect because conditioned human beings are suffering from the 4 defects and always prone to committing mistakes. But laws made by Krishna that are coming through the Vedic scriptures will be perfect. Okay, so we'll do the next verse, 113:43. Yatha kridopaskaranam samyog vigama viha ichaya kriditu syatam tathayivesha chayananam. As a player sets up and disperses his playthings according to his own sweet will, so the supreme will of the Lord brings men together and separates them. So Ichya is basically the law of karma. So the supreme will of the Lord is manifesting as the law of karma. So Narad Muni is summarizing the point that was made in the previous 2 verses, that through the force of the law of karma, which manifests as destiny, people come together and people are separated. People are protected and people die. So that is all the will of Krishna. But and Srila Prabhupada, he explains in the purport that we must know for certain that the particular position in which we are now set up is an arrangement of the supreme will in terms of our own acts in the past. So Prabhupada explains it very succinctly that it is the supreme will in terms of our own acts in the past. So our own acts in the past are resulting in the destiny which is manifested by the supreme will of Krishna. So at this point one may wonder that why is Narad Muni making the same point over? He made the same point in 41, he made the same point in 42, he's making the same point again in 43. So sometimes repetition is used for emphasis, and we see that very often. If it is an important point, it may get stated once, it may get restated in a slightly different way, and this is just to emphasize there. Here Narad Muni has a slightly different intention, because before talking about the supreme will of the Lord, he is also talking about as a player sets up and disperses his playthings according to his own sweet will. So Narad Muni is talking about 2 things. He is talking about the sweet will of Krishna, and he's talking about the supreme will of Krishna. And then we'll see that why is he making this distinction. So Narad Muni, and very much in the mood of Narad Muni, Srila Prabhupada have this fear of people taking to karma kand, because Narad Muni is also a pure devotee of Krishna. He wants to guide everybody to the path of bhakti. So the previous 2 verses, they are karma kand, Krishna appearing through the laws of karma. And Narad Muni is concerned that a person reading it or Maharaj Yudhishthira hearing it may become followers of Jaimini Rishi's Karma Mimamsha, which follows this principle that karma is the supreme will of the Lord, but the Lord is bound to follow the dictates of karma. So that is karma mimamsha. That having established the laws of karma, the Lord himself becomes bound by the laws of karma. So if there is a rule that says that if somebody kills another person and the punishment for that is death, then that rule becomes inviolate, and even Krishna cannot subvert it. So that philosophy is actually considered to be atheistic, because it diminishes the position of the personality of Godhead. So Narad Muni is saying that in addition to the supreme will of the Lord, there is also the sweet will of the Lord. And the sweet will of the Lord is that he can do whatever he wants. So by the supreme will, he interacts with those who are not his devotees. By the sweet will, he interacts with those who are his devotees. So the analogy that Narad Muni uses is that as a player sets up and disperses his playthings according to his own sweet will. So we see that the picture that Narad Muni is painting is one of complete abandon, that you sit down to play and just whatever you want to play. You set up your playthings. Children, they go into their toy bin, they'll take a figurine of a small person, an animal, a block, and they will set it together, and when they get tired, they will just destroy it. So that is Krishna's sweet will. And the reason Narad Muni is putting over here is saying that you should not make this mistake to consider Krishna to be bound by the law of karma. While by his supreme will, he does follow through with the law of karma, but he has a will that is higher than this. And by that, he can do anything and everything he wants. So Prabhupada explains this in the purport. He says that one may argue that since the Lord is bound to award the reactionary results of her own actions, the example of a player cannot be applied. But it is not so. We must always remember that the Lord is the supreme will and is not bound by any law. Generally, the law of karma is that one is awarded the result of one's own actions. But in special cases by the will of the Lord, such resultant actions are changed also. But this change can be affected by the will of the Lord only and no other. Therefore, the example of the player cited in this verse is quite appropriate. For the supreme will is absolutely free to do whatever he likes. So Narad Muni is now giving Yudhishthira a complete picture of Krishna. That how he interacts with those that are not inclined towards him by his supreme will, by the law of destiny, and how for those who are inclined towards him, he personally takes control by his sweet will. So one reading this might think that if Krishna is free to act in any way that he wants, then what is the guarantee that anything predictable might happen? Because the whole notion of predictability is predicated on the fact that a person acts the way that the person is expected to. Right? So if you go to a person and you smile at the person, the general expectation is the person will smile back at you. So that's the predictability. And what it is predicated on? The characteristic of the person responding in kind. You smile at the person will smile back at you. So there is some amount of restriction that is placed on the person. So here Srila Prabhupada and Narad Muni is saying that there is no restriction on Krishna. You smile at him, he might beat you up. You do your process of bhakti, he might send you to hell. Why? Because because that's what he feels like doing. So Srila Prabhupada clarifies this in his purport. He says that, and because he is all perfect, there is no mistake in any of his actions or reactions. So Prabhupada says that, theoretically speaking, yes, because Krishna has supreme free will, he can do. But he is also all perfect. So he will never make any mistake. And Prabhupada talks about there is no mistake in any of his actions or reactions. So reactions is the law of karma, and actions is his direct dealing with the devotees. So in both the cases, Krishna is perfect. He is infallible when executing or awarding the results of karma. He is also infallible when reciprocating with his devotees. Okay, so we'll do the next verse, 44. Yanmanyase dhruvam lokam adhruvam va nachobhayam sarvatanahi sochaste snehadanyatra mahajat. O king, in all circumstances, whether you consider the soul to be an eternal principle, or the material body to be perishable, or everything to exist in the impersonal absolute truth, or everything to be an inexplicable combination of matter and spirit, feelings of separation are due only to illusory affection and nothing more. So in response to the previous verse, Yudhishthira might say that, okay, I understand your philosophy, that you're saying about how Krishna is in control. But still, I'm a sentient human being. I have feelings, I have emotions. When my father or my father figure is going, it's natural for me to be concerned or feel lamentation about it. So I cannot become a machine because of philosophy. So in response to this implicit question, Narad Muni, in this verse, he says to Yudhishthir that there are 4 kinds of conception of one's material existence. So he says Dhruvam. So Dhruvam is that the soul is the eternal principle. That is the spiritual conception. Then Adhruvam, that the material body is eternally perishable. So this is the atheistic or the materialistic conception that says that the life is basically the result of so many physical and chemical forces coming together, and when those forces go away, then life or consciousness goes away. The third is that Ubhayam. So Ubhayam is the impersonal Brahman. So this is the impersonal conception that life comes as a fragment of the Brahman and then it merges back into the Brahman. And then the fourth point that he says is that life, that if you consider life to have the qualities of both consciousness and unconsciousness. So this is the Shunyavadi conception. So Narad Muni uses the word va as to refer to this as a conscious particle subject to destruction. So the Shunyavadi policy subscribes to spirituality, but also subscribes to the material conception that the spirit soul eventually gets destroyed. That is the Vaidism. So the difference between Vaidism and materialism is that in the atheistic conception, there is never any acceptance of of the spirit soul. The understanding is that consciousness is only a result of a combination of chemicals. In the Shunyavadi conception, there is an acceptance of soul in the conditioned state. That there is matter and then there is spirit, but the spirit is temporary. So ultimately what they say is that the matter and the spirit both get destroyed. So what Narad Muni is saying is that fine, even if you feel that this philosophy of everything happening by the will of Krishna is not enough to alleviate your immediate sorrow on separation with your uncle, then everybody in this world is subscribing to one of these four notions. So these four notions in themselves are universal. So he says either people are spiritual, or they are material, or they are impersonalists, or they are voidists. But in all the four cases, he says that there is no need for you to lament. This is the line of reasoning that was very similar to the one used by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. In the second chapter, when he is arguing with Arjuna, he is still not giving him instruction, but he's arguing with him to say that whatever you realize, whatever you perceive, there is still no reason for you to lament. So for the first conception, and this is more of us correlating the instructions in the Bhagavatam with the Bhagavad Gita, so that the soul is an eternal principle. This is explained by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 2:25. Avyakto yam achintoyam avikaryo yam uchyate tasmadeva viditvainam nanushuchotam arasi. It is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. The second conception of atheism is addressed in Bhagavad Gita 2:18. Antavanta ima deha nitya sakte sharirana anashino aprameyasya tasma yuddhasva bharata. The material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore, fight, O descendant of Bharata. The third concept of the impersonal Brahman is addressed in 2:28. Avyaktadhini bhutani vyaktamadhyani bharataha avyakta nidhyanani eva tatra evam tatra ka paridevana. All created beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in the interim stage, and unmanifest again when annihilated. So what is the need for lamentation? And the finals of Shunyavadi, voidism, is addressed in 2:26. That atha chainyam nityajatam nityam va manyase mritam tathapi tvam mahabhavo nainam sochitam arasi. If, however, you think that the soul or the symptoms of life will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament, O mighty armed. So while Narad Muni is not explicitly quoting these verses from Bhagavad Gita, but Yudhishthir was present when Krishna spoke the Gita to Arjuna. He was aware of this. So Narad Muni is simply reminding that any of the four conceptions of the existence of the jiva that you have, now factually speaking, there is only one conception, which is the spiritual conception. But Narad Muni is working as a logician. And he is saying, even if you consider material, even if you consider impersonal, even if you consider voidist, there is no need for you to lament. Okay, so we'll do the next verse, and after that we'll stop for any questions or discussion. 113:45. Tasma jayanga vaikhalyam agyan kritam atmanaha katam tvanatha kripana varteram stachamam vina. Therefore, give up your anxiety due to ignorance of the self. You're thinking how they, who are helpless, poor creatures, will exist without you. So the first part of the verse, that therefore give up your anxiety due to ignorance of the self, Narad Muni is directing Yudhishthira to be properly situated in the verse. He had given him four possible conceptions of the self. So now he's saying that just because I said that doesn't mean that you say I pick A, B, and C, or I pick D. He's saying be properly situated in the conception of the self, which means that you be properly situated in the conception that a living entity is an eternal so there is no need for lamentation for one that is already being destroyed by the course anything that takes birth in this material world is sure to destroy, to be destroyed. So there is no need to lament. So Yudhishthira might say, fine. Protected by Krishna, and we are destroyed by Krishna through the supreme will of Krishna. But still, at the same time, I do have this concern for my grandfather. So what Yudhishthira is, this is not an explicit question, it's an implicit question. He's trying to marry philosophy with reality. It's kind of like somebody is going through real life trials and tribulations. That you go to somebody's house, somebody's dear relative has died, and then you talk to the person about the soul and the body. They may philosophically accept it, but they're still feeling sad, and they would like you to address it. So for the second part, to address it, Narad Muni is speaking the second line of the verse. So the second line of the verse is Agyan Kritama Atmana. So Agyan Kritama Atmana is has a incorrect conception of the self. So I'm trying to think. Just give me a minute. No, I'm sorry. So I take that back. So Agyan Kritama Atmana. So the Atmana at this point is not pointing to the self. It is pointing to Krishna. So the point that Narad Muni is making is that even if you understand that you're not the body but the spirit soul, unless you have a proper conception of his relationship with Krishna, there will always be lamentation. So because of this improper understanding of the position of Krishna, one will develop this mentality of, he says, anataha kripana. This person will say that anatha kripana. So anath means that one who is without a protector. Kripana means miserable, in this case, poor creature. So mam mina. So So how survive without me? So Narad is using this phrase sarcastically. So he is saying that people who do not understand the correct position of Krishna will say, oh, those without me, they will surely perish. Only with my support can they survive. So, so what is this mentality? This is the Krishna mentality. I am the protector and the provider. And it is so subtle that it contaminates even those in the mode of goodness. And I was giving this example earlier on that that those people in the strongly in the mode of goodness might give charity. But while they're giving this charity, somewhere in their hearts or the mind, they may be thinking that because of my charity, this person is eating today, or this child is going to school because of my charity. If I am not there, they will starve to death, or they will become illiterate. So let's look at it from a argumentative perspective. That Yudhishthir says to Narad, so the point that you're saying is that everybody is being protected and taken care of by Krishna. So then parents will not take care of their children because they will say Krishna will take care of them. Husbands will not take care of wives, saying that you are protected by Krishna. Sons will not take care of their parents, saying that now you're connected by you're protected by Krishna. So Yudhishthira will tell Narad that you're actually misleading people. So the point that Narad is making, that he is not talking about the shelter over here, but he's talking about the ultimate shelter over here. So he's not talking about you giving in charity, but who is giving you the ability to give in charity? Who is giving shelter to the one who is giving shelter? And so if you ultimately go all the way up to this loop of who is giving shelter to the provider of shelter, then you will have to end with the position of Krishna. If you have that mentality, you will not lament. Because you're lamenting for Dhritarashtra, thinking that you are the ultimate. Dhritarashtra is ultimately protected by Krishna. His protection by Krishna is manifesting through Yudhishthir. If Yudhishthir is pulled out of the scene, then if Krishna wants to protect Dhritarashtra, the shelter will manifest in some other way. If Krishna does not want to protect Dhritarashtra, even under the shelter of Yudhishthir, Dhritarashtra will be destroyed. So this is the preaching point that Narad Muni is making over here. So in the previous verse, he talked about the fact that Krishna has his will, his supreme will, through which destiny is being established. He has a sweet will through which he is interacting with his devotees. In this verse, he's saying that unless you acknowledge that position of Krishna, you will always be in anxiety. So you may understand the law of karma. You may also understand that the person is a spirit soul, and the spirit soul is eternal, and the body is temporary. But unless you understand that Krishna is the ultimate source of everything, you will always be in anxiety. So Prabhupada in the purport says that the Lord is known as Bhutabhrat, one who gives protection to all living beings. One should discharge his duties only For no one but the Lord can give protection to anyone else. This is explained more clearly in the following verse. So Prabhupada in the purport, he's talking about, he's summarizing this point that Krishna is Bhutaprat, that he's giving protection to everyone, but that does not mean that one stops discharging one's duty. So one should discharge one's duty, because that is how Krishna's protection is being manifested. So at this point, we will see it gets expanded in the following verse. So so there are a few. So this is an important philosophical point, and there are a few references that that kind of, from a Shastric reference perspective, they validate it. So one is the statement by Prahlad Maharaj in the 7th canto, 9th chapter, verse 19, where Prahlad Maharaj is praying to Lord Nrsimhadev, and he says, "My Lord Nrsimhadev, O Supreme, because of a bodily conception of life, embodied souls, neglected and not cared by you, cannot do anything for their betterment. Whatever remedies they accept, although perhaps temporarily beneficial, are certainly impermanent. For example, a father and mother cannot protect their child. A physician and medicine cannot relieve a suffering patient. And a boat on the ocean cannot protect a drowning man." So same point is being made more eloquently. And then in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying, this is the famous Chaturshloki, Vadaham Sarvasya Prabhava Matada Sarvam Pravartate, that I am the source of all the worlds, everything emanates from me. And for those of you, I'm sure all of you have read, but the purport of 10.8 is one of the most saturated purports. If you read the purport, you'll see Srila Prabhupada quoting so many scriptural references to substantiate this point. He goes, he really goes out of his way, from the Upanishads, from the other scriptures, other Vedic scriptures, other Vedas. He goes there because it's an important point to understand. And in Katha Upanishad, and this is one of Prabhupada's favorite verses, this relationship is explained succinctly. Nitya Nitya Nam Chetna Chetna Nam Eko Bahu Namyo Viditi Kaman. This relationship between the living entity and Krishna. That Krishna is the one who is supporting everyone, and then he is the one who is satisfying the needs of everyone. So I think this is in Chaitanya Charitamrita. I'm not too sure, but this is again a phrase that Srila Prabhupada often used. Rakhe Krishna mare ke, mare Krishna rakhe ke. That if Krishna wants to kill you, who can save you? And if Krishna wants to protect you, who can kill you? And the sequel to that is that how does Krishna's protection manifest? It manifests through dharma. So in the Manu Samhita, it is said, "Dharma eva hatovanti, dharma rakshate, rakshita, tasmat dharma na hantavyo, mano dharmo hatovade." One who protects dharma is protected by dharma, and one who harms dharma is destroyed by dharma. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, 3rd chapter, 19th verse, the relationship between Krishna and dharma is established. That Krishna's tu sakshat, dharmam tu sakshat bhagavad pranitam. That dharma is directly manifested by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So through Krishna comes dharma, through dharma comes his protection, and in addition to that protection, there is the personal protection of Krishna that is extended to his devotees. Okay, I'll stop here and see if there's any discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. In case of Ubhayam, impersonal Brahman scenario, why one should not be lament for the separation? Because in other scenarios, the individual personality exists and it is eternal. So in the spiritual conception, one need not worry that if he is spiritually liberated, that is for his good. Otherwise, his journey is on. Material conception, all the other things I could understand, but impersonal Brahman, uh, if you can.
So it's kind of the same general understanding that that what you're lamenting for is either never destroyed or it never existed. So these 2 points are made, right? So when the spiritual conception is being talked about, then the point is that it is never destroyed. And when the other conceptions are talked about, the point is made is that it never existed. So in the impersonal Brahman conception, it came from the impersonal Brahman, it went back to the impersonal Brahman. In the material conception, it's a bag of chemicals that came together and then dispersed. In the widest conception, there was Shunya, and it goes back to Shunya. Right? So whether a thing is eternal or temporary, then in both cases, there is no need for lamentation.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Okay, so there's no more questions. We can go on to verse 46. कालकर्म गुणादीनो देहोऽयं पञ्चभौतिकः कथं मन्यांस्तु गोपायेत् सर्पग्रस्त यथा param. This gross material body, made of 5 elements, is already under the control of eternal time, kal, action, karma, and the modes of material nature, guna. How then can it, being already in the laws of the serpent, protect others? So Narad Muni, so far he was talking in terms of the protected, that it is difficult to and the I'm sorry, I'm just making a point over here. So the protected is protected by Krishna. The protected is serving out its own destiny. So the focus was on the protected. In this verse, Narad Muni changes the focus to the protector. So he's saying that if you are to consider yourself to be a protector of somebody else, you should be in a position that is superior to the other person. But if you yourself are in the same scenario, how can you protect somebody else? If you are drowning in the ocean, how can you help protect another drowning person? If your boat has a hole in it, then even though you may have a larger boat, even you may have a boat that looks better, but you cannot go to another smaller boat which has a hole in it and say, come to my boat, I will protect you. Because eventually your boat is also going to sink. So Narad Muni is saying to Yudhishthir that you are in no position to protect Dhritarashtra because you yourself are dying. Dhritarashtra may be further advanced, he's dying, but so are you. So how can you consider yourself to be the cause of protection of Dhritarashtra? So he's so when he says that every material body is made of and fully controlled by Kal, Karma, and Guna. So Kal, Karma, and Guna. So what are these three things? These three things are characteristic of the material world. What is the characteristic of material world? That it is temporary. Everything in the material world is subject to destruction. So Narad Muni, in his philosophical way, is saying that my dear Yudhishthir, because you yourself are a part of this material world, you yourself are subject to Kal, Karma, and Guna. So the serpent of time is also swallowing you, just as surely as it is swallowing Dhritarashtra. So how can you protect him? So going a little bit deeper, so these are the few verses of Narad Muni that are very deeply philosophical. And after that, actually speaking, you will not see any significant philosophy being spoken. It's not a right characterization. Bhagavatam, every verse in Bhagavatam is philosophical, but these depths, you will not see this for quite some time in the Bhagavatam. For the next 2.5 chapters, they're mostly narrative verses. So in a way, Sutta Goswami is giving us a dose of philosophy that we swallow it, so that we can then have time to digest it as he goes more in the narrative mode. In the next chapter, you'll see that for the majority of the verses, Srila Prabhupada does not have a purport also. He just puts the verses there because they're narrative verses. They're just painting a picture with words. So if your philosophy muscles are getting strained, just know that relief is right around the corner. So let's look at this verse a little deeply. So Narad Muni is talking about three aspects of dependence, adina, of the material body. So he says adina deha. So one, he's talking about Kal. And so time is the overarching ultimate controller of the body. Now, against this backdrop of time, what is coming? Karma. So karma is determining on a more immediate basis that what is going to be happening to the body. So this is destiny, right? So destiny is determining what is going to be happening to the body that you are occupying. Now, in the context of Kal and Karma is Guna. What is Guna controlling? Guna is controlling your free will. So the activities that you perform are performed through the modes of material nature. So we see this analogy being played out again over here about the ropes. That based on one's so based on time, on the time factor, based on one's destiny, one is getting a certain amount of free will, and within the purview of that free will, the person is acting as is determined by his intrinsic nature, which is essentially the combination of the three modes of material nature. So under the influence of time, one is forced to take birth, grow old, and die. Now the exact nature of the birth, is the person going to take birth in the family of a king or a beggar? Then how long is the person going to live? How will the person die? What kind of happiness and suffering will he experience is all determined by destiny. Now, the modes of material of nature will determine what does the person do under the influence of Kal and Karma. That under the influence of Kal, the person is going through Janma, Karma, Mrityu, Vyadhi. Under the influence of destiny or karma, the person is experiencing happiness and distress. And under the influence of the modes of material nature, the person is creating the same destiny, not the same destiny, but is creating destiny for himself in future. So this verse is essentially talking about the karma mimamsa philosophy, right? So this is the essence of the karma mimamsa policy about kal, karma, and guna. That the combination of these three is supreme. So you notice who is absent over here. So there is jiva, there is kal, and there is karma. So who's absent over here? Krishna is absent over here. So Narad Muni, he makes the second point in the verse, and this is directed specifically to those who consider themselves as shelter, for others. So he makes this point that under the influence of kal, karma, and guna, you are eternally fallible. So because you are eternally fallible, it is not possible for you to provide protection to anybody else. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport, so I'm not going to read out the purport, but I'll summarize 2 points that Srila Prabhupada makes in this context. So he says that only those in the mode of goodness can do beneficial for others. So here is talking about guna and karma. And then he says even this will be eventually taken away by time, kal. So what Prabhupada is saying is best case scenario is that a person is in the mode of goodness. And under that mode of goodness, he says only in that mode can a person do beneficial for others. Now this is describing Yudhishthira's situation. He's in the mode of goodness, and he is actually genuinely wants to support or protect Dhritarashtra as being old and invalid. But then Prabhupada says that because of the effect of kal, even that will be taken away. How will that be taken away? 2 ways. One is that by the effect of time, Dhritarashtra will die, because Yudhishthira cannot protect Dhritarashtra. He cannot make him immortal, and Yudhishthira himself is not immortal. So even if Dhritarashtra does not die, Yudhishthira will die. So because of one of the 2 situations, this protection will go away. So factually, there is no difference between the situation of the provider and the provided. They're both being manipulated by the same set of forces. So, so an example is given to explain this, that a father may consider that he's providing shelter and protection for his infant son. But there are many instances when the father dies and the child is still protected and grows up. So what is an instance of this? The Pandavas. Also, there are many instances when the father, despite all his prowess, is unable to save the child from death. What is the example of that? Maharaj Chitraketu. So what does this indicate? That the presence or absence of protection is not based on the desires of the father, but by the influence of destiny. If it was actually by the desires of the father, then no child would ever die. If the child would actually protect the father, no father would ever die. But factually speaking, children die and fathers die, which means that one who is himself fallible cannot provide protection to another. So Prabhupada in the purport then he concludes, the best remedy for getting out of the clutches of the cobra-like Kal, or its integrity, the modes of nature, is Bhakti Yoga, as it is recommended in Bhagavad Gita 14:26. So this is Mam Chayo Vibacharena Bhakti Yogena Sevata. So Krishna talking about that one who engages in devotion service comes to the level of Brahma. So then Prabhupada says that the highest perfectional project of philanthropic activity is to engage everyone in the act of preaching Bhakti Yoga all over the world. So Narad Muni doesn't say that in this verse, but Srila Prabhupada, he extends the verse to saying that yes, you can provide protection. How can you provide protection? By taking them to the shelter of Krishna. That's why he says preaching is the highest philanthropic activity, because your own shelter is always going to be temporary and fallible, but Krishna's shelter is infallible and permanent. So if you keep this preaching point aside, the point that Narad Muni is making over here is that initially, in the initial set of verses, he has spoken about the fact that a person is protected by his own destiny. The person is essentially protected by the supreme will of Krishna that is manifesting through his own destiny. After that, Narad Muni negates the notion that anybody can provide protection to anybody else by saying that even if you think that the other person needs protection, you cannot provide protection because you yourself are in need of protection. Okay, I'll do one more verse and then we can stop for discussion. Hastani sahastanam apadane chatuspadam falguni tatra mahatama jiva jivasya jivanam. Those who are devoid of hands are prey for those who have hands. Those devoid of legs are prey for the four-legged. The weak are the sustenance for the strong, and the general rule holds that one living being is food for another. So Narad Muni is continuing to expand on the notion of the protector and the protected. So the point that he's making over here is that Krishna is acting from within and without to provide support for all the living entities. So previously he had said that every living being is responsible for whatever is happening by a confluence of guna, karma and kal. So all these three are energies of Krishna that are acting in a subtle way. This verse is talking about the external material arrangements made by Krishna for the sustenance of living entities. So we can see the difference over here. So we cannot see guna, karma and kal. They're philosophical concepts that Narad Muni has explained to Maharaj Yudhishthir to indicate that through guna, karma and kal, a jiva is basically acting out the notion of being protector, and through the same thing the jiva is also creating protection for himself, because through karma one is creating destiny, and through destiny one is either getting protected or unprotected. If one's karma is sinful, then one is born in a very precarious situation. So very little protection. One has a lot of pious karma. They're born in families that are rich and opulent and very protected. So Nand Muni has talked about both the aspects. Now he is saying that let us see this in action. So let us see it around you, how this guna karma and kal are acting out. So he's saying that by the arrangement of Krishna, the living entity is provided sustenance, and by the arrangement of Krishna, the living entity is also reaching its destruction. So the fact that one living entity is feasting on another living entity for its survival is an arrangement of Krishna. So Krishna is not only the protector, he's also making he's also making arrangements to withdraw the protection. That an animal in the jungle is safe as long as it does not meet its predator. The predator has also been put there by Krishna. So the deer is happy until it meets the lion. So the deer has been put there by Krishna, the lion is put there by Krishna. Jiva jivasya jivana. So that is why Narad Muni states that everything is happening by the arrangement of Krishna, and Yudhishthira should accept this. So he says that the weak are the subsistence for the strong, and in this way, one living being is food for another. So, so Srila Prabhupada says that the point he's making is that Yudhishthira should not worry about Dhritarashtra and Gandhari in the forest. Either they will subsist by eating other living creatures, or they will themselves be eaten by another living creature. In both the cases, it is happening by the will of the Lord. So there is no reason to lament. Even if they are not eaten by another creature, they will be eaten by time. So in all situations, Dhritarashtra and Gandhari are protected or unprotected by the arrangements of Krishna. So one of the lines in this verse, Jiva Jivasya Jivanam, it is often quoted by people to ascribe meat eating to the Bhagavatam. So there are some people who know a little bit of Bhagavatam and they say, well, Bhagavatam talks about meat eating. And you say, how? And they'll say, well, Bhagavatam says Jiva Jivasya Jivanam, that one living being is the food for another. So Srila Prabhupada, when he translates Jiva Jivasya Jivanam, he translates it into that one living entity is food for another. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he translates this verse a little differently. So he says that animals, ahastani. So hastani is hand. So animals are without hands. Only the human beings have hands. So ahastani animals are food for sahastani, humans. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes a more direct statement here, saying that humans eat animals. And then what do animals eat? That the chatupadam. Chatupadam is 4 feet. So animals typically have 4 feet, and this is again notional. One might say that there are some animals with 6 feet or some animals with 2 feet, but here the logic of dominance is used. So chaturpadam. So this is the chatupadam. They eat apadani. So those who are without feet. So who are without feet? The plants are without feet. So the point that's made so far is hastani or hastani, that the humans eat animals, and chaturpada apadani, that the animals eat plants. And then the more powerful, the Mahatam, prey on the Falguni, on the weak. So in this way, one living entity, Jiva, sustains Jivanam, another living entity, Jivasya. So Prabhupada, being sensitive to the fact that people might read the Bhagavatam and draw the wrong conclusions, he gives an accurate translation, but he refrains from making the statement that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes, that humans eat animals, animals eat plants, and in this way, the powerful prey on the weak. But in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, he addresses this point directly. He says that although the law states that a human being must subsist on another living being, there is also a lot of goods. There is also a law of good sense. For the human being is meant to obey the laws of the scriptures. This is impossible for other animals. So Prabhupada is saying that fine, that humans prey on animals because they have the ability to do so. But when you're talking about ability, then the humans also have the ability to use their intelligence to understand the scriptures. And the scriptures forbid the eating of the flesh of other animals. Prabhupada goes on to say, the human being is meant for self-realization. And for that purpose, he is not to eat anything which is not first offered to the Lord. The Lord accepts from his devotees all kinds of food preparations made of vegetables, fruits, leaves, and grains. Fruit, leaves, and milk in different varieties can be offered to the Lord. And after the Lord accepts the foodstuff, the devotee can partake of the prasad, by which all suffering in the struggle from existence will be eventually mitigated. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9:26. This is the Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. Even those who are accustomed to eat meats can offer foodstuffs not to the Lord directly, but to an agent of the Lord under certain conditions of religious rites. Injunctions of the scriptures are meant not to encourage the eaters of animals, but to restrict them by regulative principle. And then later on he says, the spiritual regulative principles, however, do not allow a man to slaughter weaker animals on one side and teach others peaceful coexistence. If a man does not allow the animals peaceful existence, how can they expect peaceful existence in the human society? And Prabhupada has quite a few lecture points on this. So one of the points that he makes in one of his lectures is that, take for example those who are vegetarians. They may think that we are not killing animals. No, they are committing sins, because vegetables, they also have got life. So the nature of life is that to keep your body, you have to kill another body. That is nature's law. Then later on he says, yes, you can eat, but that is the natural law for animals and uncivilized man, not for the civilized man. Because one living entity is food for another living entity. You cannot eat your father, mother, or children. Why? Because you are human beings and you have got discrimination. So Prabhupada would use this as a rebuttal when somebody would say that Jiva Jivasya Jivanam, then he would say that, okay, if one living entity is the food for another, when your father grows old and weak, why don't you go ahead and eat him? Because the strong prey on the weak. The reason you don't eat him is because you're a human being and you have a higher intelligence and discrimination. So then you have to understand that this higher intelligence is given for you to read, understand, and follow the scriptures. So these set of verses, they are talking about the position of Krishna as a protector, the position of the jiva as the protected, and thirdly, the position of the jivas as the sub-protector. So Nad Muni is talking about all these three situations in this set of verses, And in the next verse, which we'll do in the Wednesday's discussion, Nad Muni will summarize these points for the benefit of Yudhishthir, and then he will go on to answer the question that Yudhishthir originally asked, that what happened to my uncle and aunt. So I'll stop here and see if there's any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, yes, obeisances.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
In this equation, if we want to say an equation, we don't have control on Kala and Guna, but Karma we have. But it's still, the amount of birth we took, we don't even know how much Karma we have been accumulated. I mean, even on this, we don't have control in a way. And I think the best way is to go Krishna's formula, Sarvam Dharmam Paritaja, to make karma become zero. So that is the easiest way. But
Right.
also to make it zero also it's easy to say but not easy to do.
Yes, Prabhu, right on both points, that even though notionally we have control on karma through the performance of our activities, but we literally have mountains of karma, and we have a spoon as a shovel. So one is going to a mountain with a spoon and trying to excavate the mountain. So it's a long and arduous process. So the process of surrender to Krishna is the quick and easy process. And the second point you make is also valid, that this process of surrender is easier said than done, because it goes so much against our material conditioning. So Prabhupada is the eternal optimist. He makes it appear very, very de facto. Once somebody was asking, maybe more telling Prabhupada that Prabhupada, I find it very difficult to surrender to Krishna. And then Prabhupada looks at him with real puzzlement and he says, why? And he said, Prabhupada is very difficult. Why? What's the problem? What's the difficulty there? So he was actually very puzzled. what's the difficulty there? So from the perspective of one who is convinced about the philosophy in a very factual way, it's what they say, a no-brainer. Prabhupada would say, Krishna is God, you are his eternal servant, what's the problem there? But yes, I can completely empathize with what you're saying.
Just one more comment, Prabhu. Is surrender can be also a mental process, because it can be physical. That means you renounce everything, you renounce the world. But you're living in a material world. Sometimes there's no mountain even nowadays to go if you want to go renounce on a mountain. But can it be something mental also?
Yes, Prabhu. So I think, as you rightly pointed out, that in the current day and age, the process of surrender is more in the term of conception. So our renunciation is more internal than external. It may manifest, and it will manifest in external one way or the other. So one who is internally renounced, even though they may be living in a completely materialistic situation, the renunciation will manifest in how they react to the various material pushings. And so that's the manifestation of the renunciation. But the process that is recommended for us in the current age of Kali is, yes, that we develop we develop some kind of renunciation. Really speaking, the process, like the point we have made earlier on, that spirituality is measured in terms of material detachment and spiritual attachment. Renunciation is material detachment and devotion is spiritual attachment. In the current day and age, material detachment is spoken very minimally on. The main process that we're given is spiritual attachment. That when we develop attachment to Krishna, the detachment happens as a byproduct. to that. I mean, of course, a strong material attachment makes it difficult for us to surrender to Krishna, but more difficult than surrender to Krishna is for us to break our material attachment. So earlier on, they would, like we see Dhritarashtra, right? That by the force of his will, he snaps this material ties just in the twinkling of an eye. And he was a super duper attached person. For 100, 150, 160 years, he was madly fighting for the kingdom. And then just a few words from Vidur, and it says in this chapter that he breaks the noose of material attachment, pasha, right? So it was possible in the Dwapar Yuga, not possible in this age. So what we do, we cultivate that gradual but steady spiritual attachment. That process is easy, it is simple, and because of the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it is actually more effective also.
That means we just have to add Krishna in the formula.
Yes, so that wherever there is Krishna, there is spiritual attachment. So you work for Krishna. You cook for Krishna. You have a desire to serve, then you put Krishna in the center.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very good points. Anything else? Okay. If not, we'll stop over here. Thank you very much. Vancha kalpatarubhayashchit kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, शीला प्रभुपाद की जय, निताय गौर प्रेमानंद, हरि हरि बोल, हरे कृष्ण।